Need for Speed Heat and the Crew 2 are currently the main contenders when it comes to open world racing. In this video we're going to compare all aspects of these two games, with everything from their graphics to the gameplay to see which one is best. So first let's take a look at the graphics. This wasn't mega easy to compare, as if you haven't already noticed, the colour profiles are quite different between the games, although I tried my best to match the colour of the cars as well as the lighting. Also, just for reference, all screenshots and video clips that you'll see here have been captured from a PS4 Pro, and while YouTube will have compressed this video somewhat, hopefully you can still get a decent idea of how the games stack up. First let's compare some cars then, as this is quite a good way of seeing the graphical strengths and weaknesses of the two games. On first inspection, both cars look good, although the reflective surfaces in Need for Speed do stand out as being substantially better. In this front-on shot, I also noticed the absence of some bumper detail in the Crew 2. Generally though, the detail level and polygon count is quite similar, as you can see from these comparison shots, although the car just looks so much better in Need for Speed Heat, which is mainly down to better reflections and lighting. The Crew 2 does have a much more detailed interior though, with backlit buttons and working infotainment screens. This is though only because the Crew 2 has a cockpit view, whereas Need for Speed does not. Other graphical differences are very apparent in a few other places around the maps. Once again we see that reflections are struggling in the Crew 2 compared to Need for Speed, and an example of this is the glass on these office buildings, which just looks like a blurry mess in the Crew. This brings us nicely onto the maps, and this is one of the bigger differences between the two games. The Crew 2 is based off the entire of the USA. It looks massive, although the map has actually been cleverly condensed, so it only takes around 30 to 40 minutes to drive across, although that's still absolutely huge. There's a ton of major landmarks and different landscapes, with everything from desert sand dunes to mountains and even salt flats. Need for Speed Heat on the other hand takes a very different approach to its map design, with a Miami-like coastal city. The map is quite a lot smaller than that in the Crew 2, although this makes it more dense, as it still manages to cram in industrial sites, a harbour, as well as room for off-road racing. I wouldn't say either of the two approaches is better or worse than the other, although they definitely fit the games they are made for, which is the most important thing. Both maps also have a fair few pros and cons, such as how quite a few assets are reused in the Crew 2, and you're likely to see the same buildings over and over. The smaller size of Need for Speed's map also comes with its downsides though, as while much of the map's assets are unique, there isn't really any sense of exploration or discovery once you've played a good few hours of the game. On the Crew 2 however, I'm still discovering new places, Easter eggs and landmarks even well after 100 hours played. Detail in the smaller map size offered by Need for Speed Heat is far superior though. So what about gameplay, as this is arguably the most important part of the game. Both games have the core features of a typical open world racer, although they have their own unique twists on top of this. For the Crew 2 it's definitely its racing diversity, and Need for Speed Heat has of course its cops. First let's take a look at what the Crew 2 brings to the table. The sheer amount of stuff in this game is honestly just amazing. Here's a list of all the event types, and my god it's a mouthful, so here it goes. There's street racing, drift trials, drag racing, hypercar races, rally raid, motocross, rallycross, hovercross races, aerobatic events, air races, demolition derby, jet sprint races, monster truck skills, powerboat races, touring car races, and Alpha Grand Prix races. Yeah, I think you get the idea. Basically, there's so much to do that very few people will ever complete all the races and events. And personally, I think that's great because it means you can play the game however you want to. If you like cars, then there's tens of hours of content for you, with everything from rallycross to track racing and F1 cars. On the other hand, if you like being on the water or in the air, then there's still loads of content for just doing that. The inclusion of boats and planes has also allowed Ubisoft to add some pretty cool features. One of these is the quick swap mechanic, whereby you can switch between your favourite vehicle for land, air or water. There's also live extreme events, which are races where you switch vehicle mid-race. Another cool feature on the Crew 2 is the inclusion of a house, which gets upgraded as you progress. It acts as a hub for your game customization and has multiple floors to display your vehicles. It's quite a random feature, although I really like it, so I thought it was worth a mention. The vehicle selection is also amazing in the Crew 2. There's almost 400 vehicles, which is necessary as each of those million racing categories I mentioned earlier needs its own vehicle type. Need for Speed however builds on a typical open world racer with its day-night system and police. Rather than a progressive day-night system like that in the Crew 2 though, you can choose when you want to switch. In daylight hours racing is legal, whereas at night you'll have the cops on your tail. This gives pretty much two parts to the game, which I really like as they offer very unique experiences. Racing in the daytime is very relaxed, and while it is fun, there isn't anything particularly special about it. Nighttime racing, however, is this game's big strength. The environment and atmosphere when racing at night is very good. In fact, I'd say it's near perfect. The neon theme is prominent but not too in your face, and once again the lighting is beautiful. I personally find the Crew 2 a bit annoying to play at night. The visibility is too low and everything becomes very bland. Need for Speed Heat is a completely different story, however, and that's not all this game has up its sleeve, as there's also the Heat level system. The Heat levels are an amazing risk-reward system, whereby you start at level 1 every night and then complete races and escape cop chases to try and build up your level. Whatever level you end your night on is what your earnings are multiplied by. This works amazingly well, as every level the cops get stronger and more of your earnings are at stake. And oh yeah, if you get busted, then you'll lose all of that night's earnings as well as some of your daytime revenue. This makes racing at night with a huge multiplier on the line while trying not to get taken out by 5 cop cars the most thrilling experience I've ever had in a racing game. It's seriously good fun. Having said that, the police are far from perfect. The main problem is trying to escape them. With an absence of any gadgets, there's no easy way to take them out, and while you can crash into them, this will often damage your car so much that it's often not worth it. Sometimes you can lose them through some crafty driving or clever hiding, although at higher heat levels I often find myself exploiting jumps and driving into rivers to get them off my tail. Overall, Need for Speed Heat and the Crew 2 are very good games which put a unique spin on the standard open world racer. Neither of them are perfect, although which one you should buy needs to come down to personal preference of what you want from a racing game. The Crew 2's huge map and vast variety of gameplay experiences is definitely going to appeal to many, although for some that may not compare to the masterpiece of Need for Speed's nighttime racing. Something else you should know is that Need for Speed has cross-platform support, which will be enticing for a lot of people. While the Crew 2 is available on all platforms, it does not have this feature, which is a bit of a shame as this is the better game to play with friends. Multiplayer is also something you should take into consideration. Need for Speed has definitely the better multiplayer system, although the game has a much more campaigny nature compared to the Crew 2, which means that the Crew 2 is actually a lot more fun to play with friends. So, if you want ultimate freedom over a vast map, then the Crew 2 is the one to go for. You will have to sacrifice some graphics, although no other racing game comes close to the variety that this one has to offer, so I can really recommend it. If however you're not bothered about the boats, planes and a huge map, then Need for Speed Heat offers really unique experiences. With really impressive graphics and such a good nighttime racing experience, it's definitely the best Need for Speed game we've seen for a good few years. No racing game I've ever played has the ability to build such tension like this one does through its incredibly clever risk-reward system, which makes it very unique. Anyway, that's all for this video. If you have enjoyed it or found it useful, then a like or even a sub would be absolutely amazing. But that's everything, so thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.